This week on the TT Show, we take a look at Private Division's No Rest for the Wicked, a new ultra-thin GeForce RTX 4060 Ti, IRS to use AI to find American tax evaders, NASA tests treasure planet-like solar sail, Australia versus Elon Musk, Microsoft deemed national security risk, Weta Workshop's new Lord of the Rings game, and much, much more. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT Show. My name is Jak Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta Andriadis, gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, hello. It's another
Do you want to get
jam-packed episode, and there's no rest for the wicked.
Oh, is that how we're starting, are we? Yeah. Oh boy. No, there is no rest for the wicked. I just want to check how many hours I've put into this game. This was the title we talked about a few weeks ago, where we were really talking about the artistic the artist choices that they took and the direction of the I was mentioning like the stroke around the characters. It kind of looks like I don't know if you've ever watched it, the League of Legends TV show.
Yeah, like it's just like a stunning art style where it looks painterly, it looks like a graphic novel, but then at the same time it looks like a modern 3D game. So it's not 2D. It just everything looks like, you know, like a CG film basically, because it looks like an animated film come to life. Now,
definitely.
We first covered it, I think, when it was announced at the Xbox showcase. You in particular said, "Oh my god, this looks incredible," and it just goes to show you how much art direction can influence how a game looks. So yeah, it's called No Rest from the Wicked. It's from Moon Studios.
No Rest for the Wicked.
Yep, No Rest for the Wicked. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
And they are the studio behind the Ori game, so like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which was actually published by Microsoft for Xbox. So this one here is an indie game through Private Division, which is a indie arm from 2K Games or Take-Two. So it's not backed by Microsoft, but it's going to come to PC and consoles. But at the moment, it's just launched into early access on Steam. And it's basically a different style of game from Ori. So it's a isometric action RPG. Now, that could mean many things, but it's kind of described, even they kind of describe it as like influenced by games like Diablo, but also Hades and Dark Souls and Elden Ring. It's
very Souls-like.
Yeah, it reminded me of Elden Ring a lot, which is obviously an extension of Dark Souls. Yeah,
it's we should just touch on a bit of the story without kind of spoiling it, because in these types of games, especially these like top down, they're mostly very like loot simulator for me, but this doesn't feel like a loot simulator at all. This and I can find those games quite monotonous, like Diablo and stuff like that. I usually play it for the story and then I just drop out of it because all of the loot just becomes arbitrary to me. I don't really care about that much about getting more powerful.
It's like a game of two halves. Like Diablo has like a great campaign and you can just close the book on it. But then, or you just go into like the hardcore, just like builds and items and just stats. It's all just like
you're mid-maxing all your gear and stuff like that,
which I love.
There should be those types of games out there. Hey, look, I'm a RuneScape player, so that's a game where that literally doesn't have a story. So this is quite different. This feels more like a cinematic masterpiece in terms of when the story is unfolding, there is extremely cinematic shots, and because of the art style, you get kind of lost in the world, and the world feels a bit like Lovecraftian. It's a bit macabre.
There's like a gothic.
Yeah, there's a theme that comes with it.
It's almost like a Middle Ages, like gothic, like really sort of like crusade, religious undertones, architecture and stuff like that. And speaking of like the cinematic, so like it opens, like the opening cinematic is gorgeous, right? It has, it could have just been like a pre-rendered video or a 2D animation, but no, it's like it's all running in real time, where you see like this highly detailed ship, crashing waves, like beautiful sunset, and then like like a sort of like naval sea battle, like characters, the facial animation, the dialogue, the music, the sound effects. It's really top tier stuff. So even though it's like an early access game, you can tell that like this first chapter of the story, which is what it includes, is highly polished in terms of the storytelling and and how intricate it already is in terms of like the cinematics and the story in the intro. It's a great intro.
Yeah, should we talk about the story specifically, like what players can expect out of like how there's the religious like Inquisition coming in to get rid of the the other things that are there without giving too much away? Did you want to do that, or did you want to
So
keep it spoiler free?
The game sort of opens up with like kind of like Middle Ages, like an alternate Earth in a way, where the king is dead, and the king's son is taking over, and there's like these figures in the church that are vying for power, and there's something called the pestilence, which is taking over the land. It's basically turning people into not necessarily
Lovecraftian
zombies,
monsters,
but kind of like like either like monsters or just like plague, or basically like infected, where they kind of like, you can tell that they're just pure beings of chaos. Or also like giant bosses and stuff like that. So you play a serum, which is essentially like a warrior or a holy warrior that can actually push back the pestilence. And so you basically crash land on a shore, and you basically have to your first task is to make your way to the main city. And that's kind of like the setting. Like it starts on a ship. There's this naval battle. All the factions are kind of like introduced briefly, and then you just wash up on the shore, and it's like, hey, make your way to the town. And obviously, it's not an easy task to make.
It's not. It's not. And we should talk more about the mechanics and the combat. So this game it's very similar in the sense of a Souls-like, where depending on the gear you're carrying will determine your like roll speed and how your character moves. So if the weight of your gear exceeds fast, I'm not sure of the exact number, then you'll go from doing like a dash kind of roll to a normal roll. And then if it goes heavier, then you'll get into, I think it's the heavy category, and then you do like this massive like lumbering roll.
Yeah,
but
like
you can also
hits.
charge.
Yeah, and you can do massive hits but slow measured hits.
What build have you taken?
I went heavy just because it's like I wanted to wear all the armor. So then I'm like, okay. So then I switched to like sword and shield.
Yeah.
And then offhand, I had a like a staff, so I could do like fireball spells. But then, just because it's kind of like an isometric action RPG, it's different to like Diablo or Path of Exile or Last Epoch or those type of games, because you don't choose your class when you start the game. You create your character and
big arms.
Yeah, and when you level up, you put points into various attributes, and these attributes determine your bonuses and what gear you can equip. And so, if you find,
which is a Souls-like thing, right?
Yeah. So if you find like a big heavy sword, right, and you need X amount of strength to equip, then you put points into strength, and then so basically the gear defines your build and playstyle. Yeah, and then once you get further in, you come into like the rune system or skill system or magic system. And how that works is that you don't actually have a character skill tree that you define. You basically infuse or enchant weapons. So you can put up to 4 like spells on like a sword or a staff or whatever it is. And that can be something like healing. So like I got like on my sword, I enchanted it with like an AoE healing thing. So like, you sit there and it takes couple of seconds to cast, and then you have like that small AoE
Is that
bubble.
channeling?
I think that's just like casting.
Yeah. Why was that just destroying my health when I was using it?
It takes a while to kick in. Maybe you're getting attacked or interrupted. I don't know.
I have no idea. But I went down the fast build. I'm carrying like 2 daggers. I don't even
they're the
parry.
daggers, yeah, I wanted
Yeah,
to.
and I'm just like dashing around and then like going in and like stabbing a bunch and then dashing back out because I feel like the hitboxes in this game, I think they need some work. There's some things where I've seen where I'm just like, this is absolute garbage. Like one of in the nameless place, what is it called? Region specifically. There's a big ass guy. He's big and fat, and he carries a massive double-sided battle axe. And then when you next to him for too long, he goes like this. And he shoves. You've probably encountered him.
Yeah.
He shoves you away. The hitbox for that move sucks. It's you could be standing, I don't know, 4 or 5 of your character's width away from when he does that, and you still get hit. So, and there's a few things where I've encountered that where it's just like absolute. You know, it's not as again. This is a what is it? It's
in early access.
Early access game. Yes, I was going to say open source.
So
but there is a few things like that. So I decided to go down the quick dodging. I've got lots of stamina. I've got like 18 stamina, so I'm always like just dashing around.
Yeah, you need it. Yeah, I like one of the issues is that like there's no way to respec in the game currently.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so like because it's early access and the studio is going to be using player feedback. So like since the game came out, you know, there's been a lot of hype just based on how it looks and the studio's pedigree with the Ori games. And so initial responses have been mixed because of some of the early access issues. So we'll cover it. So like the game is like stunning. I think if the combat and the exploration gels with you, like the actual level design and the environments are awesome because it has this kind of like Metroid or Zelda feel where you see parts and you're like, oh, I can't get there, but then you can go back and then you can. So you actually get rewarded for exploring and so it actually has like a sense of discovery. So
I've been exploring a lot.
Yeah, so it's not just like just a randomized dungeon map or whatever the case is. No, it's like really handcrafted.
It's a curated experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as an early access game, it has issues like
of course
any performance issues. So I'm running it on a 4080 Super, and I'm having to turn some of like the rendering down a bit just to maintain, because like the actual like if you go to the town, like it chugs like crazy, like you when a camera like pans, because like there's just like performance issues, and it's only been out for less than a week. By the time we're recording this, they've already issued like 2 hotfixes and a big patch.
Did you see what I was just about to bring this up? I was waiting for an opening.
Yeah.
They just rolled out an update. It was 1.2 gigabytes. And one of the fixes I was reading as you were doing the intro of the game, GPU culling. Hold on, I'll pull up.
Yeah, that's right. To boost performance. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it'll be what I was finding was that the frames weren't consistent.
It's not consistent, right? Yeah.
So
it's
like
not optimized.
Yeah. 100%.
It's not like the game constantly runs at like 20 FPS. Like it'll just crash and like up and down. But like the good thing is that when you're actually out in the main world, like the intro has performance issues, but like once you actually get to the main world and you have to make your way to the city, that whole section I found ran more consistent. Like it was actually
definitely
like I actually forgot about like or wasn't paying attention to the performance issues as I was in the intro. But then once you get to the city and you get those amazing cityscapes with how the world is rendered, like it will just the performance will just tank. And I don't think that's
especially when you're going from one like you can tell when it's loading another region or sub-region of the city.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like you can tell, or you can feel in the frames when it's trying to just gather more data from your SSD, and the game, it feels like the game isn't doing it as fast as it should be. So the frames, I'm playing on the 4090, completely maxed out. I'm getting anywhere between probably 40 FPS and 90 FPS. So in the areas where it's really good and it's like completely fine, and I feel like you can play this game on 90 FPS. I don't need it to be really any higher. I want it to look as good as possible. There isn't that much happening, like like the camera isn't spinning a lot, so you know I can play it on a lower FPS. Still more than 30 though. That's the way more than 30.
Is that based on what we've seen from the developers, they're implementing patches and fixes at a steady clip, right? And there are like a lot of people posting, like it's mixed on Steam because a lot of people are posting negative reviews based on the performance, which is fair enough. Like you buy the game and it doesn't run well on your hardware, that's understandable. But early access, this is very much an early access game in the traditional sense, where it has optimization issues, and there are like niggling things where they're already fixing, like, you know, the amount of time, because there's a lot of crafting in the game. Like the amount of time it takes to mine,
cook
or
food,
to chop down a tree, or to like that's all been, like in the latest patch, has been decreased.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like
because I felt like the rewards for spending the time chopping down a tree or mining or digging up anything with a shovel is hilarious. Like it is, you just get like one bit of wood and it takes you like 25 seconds to chop down a tree.
Right. Yeah. Like, these sort of quality of life stuff, I can overlook, because it's like, okay,
of course.
This sort of stuff is going to be fixed. That's a guarantee. Like inventory management becomes a problem the more you play, because everything, like there's like so many different inventory items, like different tiers of stuff, and then getting to like your first room and then having to dump it in that stash. But then that stash,
did you fix the elevator straight away?
Yeah, and then that's exactly.
That's what I did. As soon as I realized how long that run was, and I would have to be going back to drop resources to gather more to then upgrade other stuff. I was like, I need to go to that bloke and fix that elevator and that staircase, because there's no way I'm going to make that run. That is just such an unnecessary run. I need to spawn in the marketplace, go like take 3 steps over, take the elevator right up to my room, drop off the stuff, come back. That'll take me 10 seconds.
Here's like an easy fix, right? And this is something that they'll have to add, because it seems like an oversight, right? Is that so the way the fast travel system works is that it's a large world as it is. Obviously, it's going to become bigger and bigger as they add more biomes and stuff. And you basically have like these bonfires, like a Dark Souls or a
Embers,
or whatever it is in Elden Ring, I forget. But you can, when you're out in the world and you find one of those, you don't rest at it. You just like activate it. So that's your single fast travel point outside of town. So at any point you can fast travel back to town, or or to a single point out in the world. So you can choose. So that you have to be. So it isn't just you're not just hopping all over the map. But,
no, you can only go back to your last one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the one that you activate.
The activated last, which I think is I thought was really silly.
I think it's a cool thing because it forces you to
run through a bunch of mobs.
Makes it more dangerous.
No, but I don't refight any of that stuff.
You just
if I'm going, definitely, I want for sure. Like, because I already know that in my mind, I'm like, I've beaten everything here. There's nothing here that's interesting. I would just be, again, doing what you do in Diablo, just loot farming. So I run straight past them.
Yeah. I think they might lessen that if there's like other like hub areas or more like main areas to make it a bit easier. But like, I think like a way to fix a lot of like the inventory management like right away, like easy, would be when you're in the town, because of the fast travel point or the whatever the travel point there is close to the market, everywhere, which is all the stuff is close by, which is makes sense because that's where you go to sell gear, upgrade, enchant, etc., etc. But when you that fast travel point, you should just have your stash there. Because you fast travel back to town, you drop your stash, you go your shopping, you manage your inventory and your stash, so you don't have to travel then go into a loading screen, into your house, climb up these massive stairs, get to your stash, which is in like a bedroom, because that's where you're staying before you get a house. It's silly. Like you should have like those magical stashes like located in a couple of areas, like wherever there are like vendors and work tables and things like that. Should just have a stash nearby so you can manage your inventory. Even though you've got limited space, people are complaining that you need more space. Well, if your stash was in more locations and accessible, that would minimize it. That would actually improve the experience quite a bit.
Or just put a fast travel point at the rookery, on the right on the balcony edge, just so you spawn at the top, and then I also think going down those stairs unnecessary.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
So I agree with you. Put it next to the marketplace. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, that would work.
Like, you fast travel back to town, and then you walk to the marketplace. There's your stash, and there's like the 4 main vendors that you need. If that's what if you're going back to town just to dump stuff if you're full, like because you got all this gear or you want to sell it or whatever the case is.
Yeah,
because that becomes it's also a question of the style of game that they want to make, right? So there are people like criticizing, stuff like that, or like the slow combat or things like that. But like if that's a design choice, like if they want to make it a game where you shouldn't be picking up absolutely everything, that you should be dropping stuff,
destroying it, yeah.
Then come out and say that, and so then you go, okay, so like, having a stash tab in town makes sense, but like, like for them to say like, we're not going to increase your inventory space because it's not a game where you're supposed to just pick up absolutely everything and just have like millions of items, right? Like it's not that. You have to pick and choose what you want. You pick it up. Is that a piece of loot that you like? Yes, keep it. If not, discard it. You know what I'm. So it's like it's that style of game where it's a bit more measured, a lot more thought, which actually makes sense because the combat is really
thorough.
Yeah, it's kind of like Dark. You have to time your movements. Like it's
you have to be paying attention. There is especially if there's multiple enemies, it gets exponentially harder when there's multiple enemies and they are all doing different stuff, because you can get caught in stun lock and then you are just if you get knocked down,
I think you're
probably gonna die if there's multiple enemies, because there's a high chance that another enemy is winding up for another attack. Exactly, so it's getting knocked down and caught in stun lock is probably the hardest. Avoiding those two things is probably the hardest thing that you can do. Yeah, you can choose to do that either getting really good at parrying, but I don't know.
The parrying system.
I think the parry window it's
too small.
It's too small for you to really enjoy it.
It's not communicated well enough. Like there needs to be like a flash on the enemy, and like the Batman Arkham games. So
where it go red above the head.
Yeah. Like there needs to be some sort of like visual. Like I think like even
visual
with some
indicator.
Like the bosses, like there's not enough visual indication on when you should be doing what. And I think all that can be fixed. I think the parry system I avoid because the window's too small, and I'm not 100% certain when I need to parry for every type of attack, because different enemies attack at different speeds. So I just 100%. Use my shield just to like take the stamina hit and then be able to get like one hit in, 1 or 2 hits in, and then go back.
Evade. Yeah.
So it's not Diablo where there's like 50 demons on the screen and you just like mow them all down. Like it's usually one-on-one encounters, and when the game gets hectic is when you're going up against 2 or 3 enemies, right?
Exactly.
That's when it's
right.
hectic. So it's not.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not just mowing through, 1,000 enemies every 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's not a hack and slash kind of experience. It's more measured. It's more Dark Souls like, where you will encounter like maybe 1 or 2 dudes in an area, and if you accidentally pull like 3 or 4, now you're in trouble. And what I found is really good, and something that I enjoy in games, because I typically abuse it if it's not there, is the areas that an NPC or a mob can go. And sometimes in games, if you take them just outside of their limitation,
right.
you can stand on the other side and just use range attacks, and then they'll be caught in a like if those they're dragged towards you and they're trying to go back, and then they just get stuck there, and then you can just gun them down. It's cheesing them, but
it's cheesing it. But like the thing is, like if there's a way to cheese in these type of games,
you're gonna. Yeah, 100%. I abused, there was this one boss that I was stuck on for like 15 minutes and I wanted more of the story. So I found out the focus with the staff, and then I realized I had a bunch of the vials that would give me 100 focus.
Oh yeah.
So I just stood there and just destroyed the boss by just drinking potions and then just using the fireball staff, and I just gunned him down.
That's how I managed the first big boss. Was like, man, getting close to this guy, I'm just getting absolutely destroyed because it's like one hit and you're down to like hardly any health, and you have to basically pot, or else you're gonna die in your next hit. So it's like, all right, keep my distance, and I'll just use all my focus potions. And the thing is, like, which is basically like your mana or your magic for your spells and abilities. And like picking those up as you're exploring, like I knew, I'm going to save these for like, because if there's like a boss or something, it's like, I know I'm going to need it. Like I'm not going to waste these potions on like trash mobs or just regular enemies.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm really excited to open the game later to see if it runs a bit more smoothly after these patch notes, because this is only a hot fix. Yeah, this is only a hot fix.
Yeah, they're calling it a hot fix.
This came out today.
Yeah, they're calling it a hot fix.
This came out 4 hours ago.
But it's a pretty big patch. I think they probably say they've already got like whatever patch 1 is supposed to be in terms of like updating the game. With quality of life and all these other things. So these are just, fixes that they're getting in the game, that they're actually changing stuff based on feedback and what they're seeing, which is great, by the way.
Great. Yeah.
I think this game, when it hits 1.0, has every chance to be like a minimum like 9 out of 10, like a potential master. Like it is a potential masterpiece in the making. It's rough around the edges now because it's in early access. It needs improvements, it needs quality of life updates, it needs obviously more content. I'm excited to see what multiplayer is like, because one of the first big updates is going to be co-op, 2 players, which will be interesting to see how that all works. Apparently they've developed the engine where the physics system and all of that like runs, I think, parallel on it's like on a network as well. So so when you're playing online, it's going to be synchronized, or however it works is that like, because
kind of like Diablo, where I can just join your
like it'll be your realm. Like
realm. That's right. Yeah,
because you create a realm when you think like so that realm has like runs all the physics and stuff like that.
Is a bit more of an inside baseball question, but did you go to the war room?
No, I didn't try it. Like I wanted to try it, but that's like it looked like a hard dungeon. I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to bother with that yet.
The thing in there had, it immediately one-shot me because I went in there at like level 4 or something like that, because I saw on the bounty system, like, kill the thing in the war room. I'm like, I think I walked past that. So I just like, I'll just go see if I can kill it. I went in there, instantly died. And then I went back to the bounty thing. I'm like, oh, okay, it says active next to it. I'll just choose another one so it pops up on the map. And instantly deleted that bounty. And I'm like, no. And then I went back to the war room.
You can't get the bounty again. Yeah. So like there's
they've changed it now. They've changed it.
Yeah.
In the patch notes, it says bounties and challenges changes. Bounties and challenges are no longer deleted if you choose to abandon them. Thank you, because I want to kill that thing later on. But I went back to the room and it was just instead of like there was a boss in there was just a round table and a bunch of chairs. And I'm like, no, I can't access that boss anymore because I accidentally abandoned it. But hopefully when I get back on tonight, it'll be there again, because that thing looked deadly. That looked deadly. Wow. Nah, what a game. I very much enjoy my time with that. We'll keep you updated as we get through it. Should we move on to another story now? Did you want to talk about the graphics cards?
Yeah, just a quick break though. We'll just all right, and we're back. Before we jump into the funky little graphics card, let's just quickly talk about Weta Workshop's Lord of the Rings game.
Oh,
which isn't what you expect, although it's kind of cool. So Weta Workshop is the physical... So like, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, massive fans, myself and Jak included, of course. There it is.
Yes.
One of the great film trilogies of all time. And, film... Yeah. You shall not pass.
Go on.
Yeah, so the films were made in New Zealand, and at the time, Peter Jackson's special effects company Weta got basically became like a special effects powerhouse studio, right? So there's Weta Digital, Weta Workshop. Weta Workshop is where all the miniatures were made, all the models, and all the armor. Like with like the battle scenes in Lord of the Rings, like they created like thousands of chainmail armor and all this sort of stuff. So Weta Workshop makes collectibles as well. So so they're a studio in New Zealand. So they actually have a game development team there called, I think, Weta Workshop Game Studio, and they've got a new game, and this one is going to be published by Private Division as well, which is no rest for the wicked connection there, and it's called Tales of the Shire are the Lord of the Rings game, which is such a confusing title. And it's coming
bizarre.
Later this year for Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. So what is it? It is not like an action game. It's not Lord of the Rings, the film, in game form. It is basically, imagine Nintendo's Animal Crossing, but set in the Shire. So it's basically a Hobbit life sim. They describe it as a cozy game where you're a Hobbit, and food is everything. Your garden, cooking recipes and all sorts of stuff. Designing your little Hobbit hole.
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
No.
But the thing is, it depends. Like if you're a fan of, because Animal Crossing is huge, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't play it.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I said it's not what you think. It's not my cup of tea either, but it's fun that I think it's cool that there's a Lord of the Rings sort of like Animal Crossing style game.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at No Rest for the Wicked, and then I imagine if Weta
that was like
and Private Division did a Lord of the Rings game, I would be all over it.
Yeah.
But instead, they've made this, which I'm sure people will love. Those hobbits. I mean, I don't want to be a stickler for details, but
they look weird.
They don't. They do look weird.
I was about to say, the concept is fine, but I think the hobbits just look like these weird, like dolls with like dead eyes, and it's there's not enough like art style in it. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be cutesy like Animal Crossing or whatever, like you need to double down on that aesthetic. Whereas this kind of looks like the environments look pretty cool, but like the characters, like it just doesn't look like it has a lot of style, if you know what I mean.
If it was not photorealistic, but a more realistic Shire, I would be a little more around the bend on this. But I wouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy it. It is. I can imagine it's like a cutesy kind of game that you just cuddle up on the couch, and then you've got your potatoes in the Shire and stuff like that. I imagine that is how it's going to be played. It would be weird if someone was sitting like with a 4090 just in their gaming dungeon,
like
just
the first
smashing this game.
In the press release is Nintendo Switch, so like that goes to show that it's a casual game. So not a big story, but like there's a brand new Lord of the Rings game, and the fact that it's Weta Workshop developing it, they worked. I mean, they designed, they worked on some of the greatest films of all time, and
they're the goats, man.
They got a game team, so
they get a
lifetime.
from Weta.
That's right.
This is handcrafted by Weta Workshop. It's got their stamp under it.
I love like Planet of the Apes, like the original 70s Planet of the Apes. So Weta Workshop did like some collectibles. I got not in here. I got them like in like the main living room, like these like Dr. Zaius and Cornelius, like the apes, like these great cool little like vinyl figurines that they do.
That's sick. Yeah, Weta is fantastic, and I'm sure despite the art style, there will be a emphasis on the attention to detail if they're keeping towards they're trying to lean as closely as possible towards Tolkien's legendarium and like what's actually in the text. There will be some kind of emphasis on the what you can do in the Shire and like how the hobbits actually live and how they interact with each other. I think I read in your story you can go down to Bywater, which is nice, which is just outside of the Shire. It would be cool if you could visit different characters like that
I think
actually
is that like your goal is to turn Bywater into like a thriving part of the Shire.
Yeah,
so like
right.
you're just on the outskirts, so you got to help like build it up into like what we see in the movies.
No, it would be cool. It would be really cool if you could go visit like Merry and Pippin and go to Sam's house and stuff like that. But the Tolkien estate is quite a let's say pain in the ass when it comes to IP stuff. So you gotta and you gotta jump through a lot of hoops and go through some red tape to get any of the official names from Tolkien's Legendarium. So it'll be interesting to see how far they've got with the licensing on this. But yeah, I don't think I'll be enjoying it too much.
I don't think I'll be playing it either. But anyway, I mean, more Lord of the Rings. Like, who knows? It could end up being like a great like Animal Crossing riff, and then people will be super into it.
I just want a new Shadow of War game. That's all I want. I want to just mow through orcs. That's all I want to do. Did you want to go to the graphics cards, or did you have another game story you wanted to talk about?
Actually, there's one more game thing which will wrap up all the game stuff. Is PlayStation expanding its PC stuff. This is something we've talked about for a while now. So, earlier this year, PlayStation, obviously there's been a lot of movement in the game industry with like studio closures and downsizing, and that's affected PlayStation's first party studios. But during like a quarterly or a financial report or whatever it was with investors, Sony's CEO said like, we're going to double down on PC and bringing PlayStation games to other platforms. And we've already seen that this year. And last year, God of War, and this year we had Horizon Forbidden West, which runs extremely well on PC. And
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Next month we're getting Ghost of Tsushima, the samurai open world game, which is a great game from the PS4 era. And so basically, these games are all like playable on Steam, right? But you don't really associate them as as like a game that you're playing on PlayStation or as part of like the PlayStation ecosystem. But that's actually changing. So Ghost of Tsushima is actually going to introduce a PlayStation overlay on PC.
Oh.
So not that the PC needs another overlay, right? You've got Xbox Game Bar, you've got the Steam overlay, Epic Game Store has an overlay, everything. There's Battle.net, there's so many things, right? But when you think of PC and Xbox, right, you think of the Xbox app. You got Game Pass. Your console and your PC experience is similar enough, right? Like you got all the same services, friends lists, achievements, etc., etc. So Xbox kind of like lives on both, on console and PC, almost.
Yeah, it's established on both.
Yeah. Whereas as PlayStation, it's more like they're porting the games to PC. You play it on Steam. Case closed. That's how it's been so far, and so far so good, right? But Sony is obviously looking at establishing PlayStation, the brand, as a presence on PC. So even though this may seem like small news, it's actually pretty major because it's almost encroaching on what Xbox has been doing since Windows 10, right?
Yeah.
So not only this PlayStation overlay will give you access to PlayStation things, right? So you will have your PlayStation profile, which will sync with PC. You'll have PlayStation friends list. You'll have trophies, which is like the achievement system for PlayStation that, trophy hunters and the millions of PlayStation gamers love.
Yeah, they love
trophies. So they're going to synchronize with the PC version. So you'll be able to jump on PC and collect trophies.
Platinum a game.
Yeah. And so all of this is starting with Ghost of Tsushima next month. And, I wouldn't be surprised if they just start rolling these updates out to God of War, Spider-Man, and they basically get PlayStation trophies, PlayStation friends list, Helldivers, which is a co-op game, right? So if that adds PlayStation trophies, they'll kind of like bridge the gap so like PlayStation will feel like it's also PC as much as it has been strictly console until now. So
Yeah.
it is almost like a signal that Sony is super serious about bringing everything PlayStation to PC. Even though this is just, starting with just one game next month, you can just already see how this is going to play out. There's going to be a dedicated PlayStation app probably sometime soon. The trophies that could even bring like a storefront to PC. They could even bring their PlayStation Plus subscription service, like have it where you pay $10 a month on PC and you get, or you pay whatever it is and you can get all these games on PlayStation, but also you get all their first party games on PC. So you can just jump on PC and play them. There's things that they can do that this basically opens the door to them doing so much more on PC.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it is a no-brainer that Sony is preparing to launch some kind of dedicated, I'm guessing it will be called I don't know, the PlayStation app or something like that on PC, and you'll be able to download a separate client. And it also seems like a no-brainer that they would implement their monthly service, PlayStation Plus, if I'm
that's right,
correct.
PlayStation Plus, which has extra
I'm guessing they'll just rip the same model from Microsoft and enable, if you get PlayStation Plus, it'll enable all first party title downloads or something like that. Like you have access to all of Sony's first party games and then a select few of other developers and publishers that will be a part of that ever growing list. I think they're just going to do exactly what the Game Pass is, because look how much money Game Pass is making for Microsoft. That is why Game Pass is the reason that you're right in saying that Xbox feels multi-platform. It feels like when I'm playing an Xbox game on PC, it feels the same as when I'm playing it on an Xbox, in terms of it being a seamless experience between both.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sony will have a long way to go to catch up to Xbox, right? So it's not to say that this puts them on equal footing, because what Xbox has done, they've kind of like spearheaded this thing where you buy it once, play it anywhere, right? So their first party games,
Family.
you buy Forza, you can play it on PC, you can play it on Xbox. Your saves are synchronized with the cloud, your progress and your achievements are synced up. So it's like a brilliant system where it just drops the barrier. Like take a look at like Diablo 4, right? So Diablo 4 is on Xbox, but it's also on PC. And so you have to buy the game separately. You got different achievements or different system to play it. That's the way it has always worked. It's like you want to play this game on PC, well, you're going to have to buy it for PC as well. And, if you want to do that for Helldivers, you have to buy it on PlayStation, you have to buy it on PC. Whereas if it's a first-party Microsoft game, you just buy it once and you play it on either platform. And will Sony do that at some point? Potentially. Like, I don't see why not. If they want to capitalize, it's just a value add, because Microsoft is already adding this value, to be competitive, they need to follow suit in a way.
What I would like to ask you is, when a first party game releases on a new Xbox, on an Xbox, brand new game, and you buy it, am I able to play that day one on PC?
Yeah.
Do you think Sony will do that? I don't think they will. I think when a first party title comes out, let's say with the PlayStation 6 or the PS5 Pro, I think there's still going to be a year or whatever delay before it comes to PC or in this PlayStation app. And then because I'm paying for the monthly subscription of the PlayStation app, I will then automatically get access to it. Or if I've purchased it, let's say I own a PlayStation 6 or a PS5 Pro, I've purchased it on my PSN account, then it automatically enables me to play it on PC when it comes out. I think they'll still have a delay. What do you think?
I think that's fair based on what Sony has done. So like if you look at when the PS5 launched, they had games that were on PS4 and PS5, right? And if you bought the PS4 version and you wanted to play the PS5 version, you would have to pay an upgrade fee. Upgrade your game to the PS5 version. whereas Microsoft doesn't do that. Like it's one code for every version of the game. So if a game is playable, like if it's a first-party game on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC, it's one code for all three. Right? Whereas Sony would be 3 codes for all three. So like if Spider-Man is on PS4, that's a PS4 game that you have to buy. There's a PS5 version, that's a PS5 game that you have to buy. There's a PC version, that's a PC game that you have to buy at full price. So that's like 3 times the cost if you want to play it on 3 different systems. Now, like how long can they continue to do that? I think that they will continue to do that for the foreseeable future. Well, I guess for like the next year or two, because they still have to there still has to be a cadence of games that are already out on PlayStation that are going to come to PC. Like God of War Ragnarok needs to come to PC at some point. Spider-Man 2 needs to come to PC at some point. The Last of Us Part 2 still needs to come to PC. So at the moment, they're kind of like shortening the window between releases because obviously they only just started kind of like bringing games to PC. So like we've had games that are, years old or somewhat recent. So they're benefiting from like all this extra money. So like their PC game sales are actually quite decent, which is why they're continuing to do it. They want to bring more games to PC because it's more sales. So whether or not, so it comes down to basically whether or not they see they see PC releases as a second wind sort of scenario. So like the game comes out on PlayStation, like Spider-Man. So now it's already been out. Let's say it's been out for a year, which it hasn't. But let's say by the end this time, 4 or 5 months from now, it's been out for a year. They've sold 10 million copies or whatever the case is, and it's probably not going to sell another 10 million on PS5. It's already sold 80 to 85% of what it's going to sell. And then, okay, so if we release it on PC now, we now get an extra 3-4 million sales and that's just free money in a sense, sort of like it's kind of like a second wind. So whether or not that's how their model is going to work, then that means that no, they won't do a sort of situation where you just buy the game on PS5 and you get it on PC as well.
I hope they do the latter. I hope they go, okay, PC is as valuable, if not more valuable than console gaming. And games like Helldivers 2 is an example of that.
They know it.
Co-releasing where it comes out on PlayStation and then it comes out on PC at the same time. Kind of like they're testing the waters. Wait, am I correct in saying that? That game released on PC
and PlayStation,
at the same time, right?
Which is surprising because usually they don't do that.
Yeah, maybe that's a test where they go, okay, well, this game was so popular. It's it's still popular. Maybe
that was an anomaly.
Hey?
There's no way that they would have expected how popular that became.
No, not at all.
Because, that's kind of like I wouldn't say a B tier game, but it's not like a Spider-Man or a God of War, right?
No, of course not.
So they go, okay, so this is an online game. It's not one of our major flagship releases. And it's coming out earlier in the year. So, there's a PC version. Let's get them out at the same time. So we've got cross-play and all that kind of stuff. So there's a thriving audience. And then it became like a mega hit where apparently it was 50-50 in terms of sales.
Yeah.
Just as many PC players as PlayStation players. Millions of people buying the game and playing it together. Or, so there's like you would expect that they're looking at the Helldivers situation and saying, okay, so if we have another online game, why, we'll follow that same model again. We're not going to just go, okay, this is PlayStation and then 6 months later it's going to come to PC. I think at the very least for anything that's online will be day and date, but they might even look at saying, well, what if we did it for like another major release like Last of Us Part 3 or something like that, 5 years down the track and say, let's launch it on PC and PlayStation at the same time.
Do you think that would impact unit sales of the whatever PlayStation that they're trying to sell, like say the PS5
that's
Pro,
the thing, right?
Or because Sony is grasping at trying to maintain a steady increase of hardware sales. The same, but while Microsoft, on the other hand, they sell half as many units. If you just look at like the PS5, right? They don't necessarily care or. I mean, of course they care, but they have an emphasis on PC as much as they do
and
Xbox
services,
itself
right? They're selling
and
you
services.
an ecosystem.
Yeah, Sony's more
that's why-
reliant on their hardware and like locking the player in to a certain area, but that seems to be changing. So maybe Helldivers 2 is probably the best example that they can see internally. On this can work if we do release first party titles on PC at the same time as our current gen console, then we can only bolster a larger audience, because games like Rise and Fall, that's, you know, Helldivers 2 we might not even be talking about that game in a year's time, or it can be a legacy game where it just keeps on continuing. But right out of the gate, you want heaps of players to be trying your game, because then you get it's like a it's audience exposure. If the more players that are exposed to the game, the higher chance that you're gonna have a lasting audience on it.
That's right.
So I don't know which way they're gonna go. I think
like Helldivers wouldn't have been as much of a phenomenon if it didn't also come out on PC, because you got to understand
completely agree.
The hardcore PlayStation community, which is massive, right? But they're kind of like in a bubble. I mean, if we're being honest, but that's the case with like most hardcore communities, is that, you know, they're super passionate about one thing, and that's where their focus is. So you got like the hardcore PC gaming community and the hardcore PlayStation gaming communities. They're basically separate, but they obviously share a lot in common, because, you know, they're gamers at the end of the day.
They love games, yeah.
Exactly. So when you've got like Helldivers, you know, just, you know, striking a chord with both communities, and you're looking at you're basically looking at the two biggest gaming communities on the planet, right? For hardcore gamers, people that play on PlayStation because it's the best-selling console, and people that play on PC because it's, you know, hundreds of millions of people with Steam, and, you know, people that are PC gaming, the hardcore PC gamers, you know, measure in like millions and millions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see how they go about bridging this gap between PC and console and PlayStation. It's going to be a bit of a dicey thing. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see where they connect and where they put up the barriers. But overall, this is a good step towards a more of a unified gaming space, which I really enjoy, because I do love PlayStation games as well. Let's finish off the gaming stuff. Let's actually finish off the gaming stuff with the Ubisoft Far Cry 7 rumors.
Oh yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on this. So Far Cry 7 is, according to a known Assassin's Creed leaker, is due for an imminent unveiling. And according to this leaker, it will include hold on, I just want to make sure I get this right here. I want to tee this up perfectly. So according to the leaker, there'll be an Oscar-winning actor in it. Cillian Murphy, who won Best Actor for his performance as Robert J. Oppenheimer in Christopher Nolan's film Oppenheimer. The rumors are that he is going to be playing the villain in Far Cry 7. And nothing would make me buy the Far Cry game faster, the new Far Cry game, if Cillian Murphy was starring as the main villain. I didn't play 6, but I know that the guy from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito. Yeah. And that game received mixed reviews from critics. But the general consensus was that the villain was, you know, really good in it, but like the gameplay was kind of like not. Like Far Cry has, you know, we're talking about Far Cry 7, right? And that's a game that has like transformed over quite a few entries, where it seems to be like villain driven, or like having like this spectacle, or like having like iconic sort of like, you know, memorable characters and things like that. You know, separate to that though, like the action sandbox of it, like, you know, having an open world where, you know, you do things, or, you know, you can destroy this or take down this outpost and you see the repercussions, or, you know, enemy AI that's that reacts to what you do and stuff like that, which is all cool stuff. But that kind of like peaked with Far Cry 2 and 3, and the last one I played was Far Cry 5, which was set in like rural America. That was pretty good, but I kind of like bounced off it because it just became like a repetitive Ubisoft game, where they copy, one of those their big open world games where it's just you look at the map and it's just like an icon fest of like that's an outpost, that's an outpost, that's a save point, that's a hunting ground, that's a hunting ground.
That's a waypoint, that's a fast travel.
That's a fast travel, that's a tower, like
that's
where
a
it's
quest.
just that where it's like sure it's fun, but it's like you just lose. I just lose interest in Far Cry.
I think they can quickly feel hollow. And what I mean by that is it doesn't, even though the world is dynamically changing to your actions of like, say you take out a community outpost or something like that, you clear an area and of all of the enemy mobs. And you do that so many times, like the world is reacting around you, but not in the same way or detail as like The Witcher 3 or like Cyberpunk or something like that. Like it feels more shallow in Ubisoft world, if you know what I mean. Like when you walk through, I don't know, in The Witcher 3, you walk into a town or something like that. Like people would just start talking to Geralt and stuff like that. Doesn't really happen. It's mostly like you run past NPCs and they're like, say in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they're like, Malaka. And then they just shout stuff at you as like you're running past.
The one exception that like I have a soft spot for Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
So do
not
I.
just because of the ancient Greek setting, which I adore as a setting for anything. It's just like it just struck the right tone somehow. Like that game is just too big for its own good, right?
It is so big.
And like it's almost like it's one of my favorite sort of like games from that era, or whenever it came out. But it's like a hard game to recommend because it's like, well, I mean, you're going to be playing this for like 100+ hours, and it's going to take you a few months because you're going to hit these sort of like walls where it becomes too repetitive, and then you take a break, and then you come back to it, and then you're like, oh, this is great, but it still has those Ubisoft elements that you're talking about, where it's, you just kind of like check out from it, where it's just like, oh, it's another X thing.
It's another outpost. It's another clear this area.
Small,
it's
tiny little village with 4 people that just stand there and like, okay, I'm just running past and okay. But then you got these brilliant things like, where like the system in Odyssey where almost like assassins are hunting you down, and it's like a tier list.
Bounty
and like
system.
The bounty system where like, more powerful bounty hunters start hunting you down, and you're like, oh, I got to take these guys out, or the whole, the shadow Illuminati stuff, people that you have to take out, and you find the clues, and there's this huge map where it's like a little mini game, but like, you have to like all these assassinations that you have to do, and you just get really invested in it.
Yeah,
but like,
you can.
It still suffers from certain things. So like this will having Cillian Murphy is enough for me to be like, oh, I want to see what this looks like and what it's about and who he's going to play and where it's going to be set. Because where it's going to be set as well is interesting because Giancarlo Esposito was set in South America. Far Cry 5 was rural America, kind of like the Bible Belt down south. And it was like a religious cult, I think, was the villain. Far Cry 4 was someone like in the Andes, like Himalayan mountains or something like that. Far Cry 3, the jungle. So like with Cillian Murphy, like is he going to be playing like an ex-British soldier or something, like a gone madman?
Or in Ireland somewhere?
Yeah, like a warlord in Ireland. They're going to back to like the game's jungle roots, which the original Far Cry was Crytek, or it was like a it was like when the original Far Cry came out. This is before Ubisoft, I think, took over the franchise. I can't remember. They may have published the first one. I'm not too sure, but that was like one of the most visually stunning games on PC. Like it was incredible. Like it was kind of like it had like the open world elements, but it had like this thing where like you were just like in this lush jungle setting, and you could just like hide in the trees and the bushes, like you could do things in like that you hadn't really seen or experienced in a game before. So maybe it's going back to those sort of like the jungle or like the island, the idyllic island roots with like bright blue water and sandy beaches and palm trees and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, they do a lot of Like it's kind of like a soft survival experience as well, where you got to like gather
Yeah, the upgrading and crafting
smaller. It's kind of like it's very soft survivally. I would love, because I'm a massive fan of Peaky Blinders, if they went slightly into the future, ever so slightly, all the way up until the era of Peaky Blinders, which was like 1920s, 1910s or something like that, just after the First World War. And that was the setting for Far Cry 7. So you have
Modern
you're going
weapons.
up against Thomas Shelby, or like the equivalent. so Cillian Murphy could just slide right in there as the villain of the town or whatever, and he runs
with
brutal
modern weapons.
Yeah, it'd be guns and stuff like that.
But in that kind of like a dystopian,
Yeah,
chimney
industrial
sweep,
era.
chimney sweep London era.
Yeah. It would change it up.
Like, yeah, I mean, Ubisoft is like about to like come back in a big way. Like since the like the pandemic and stuff like that, they've like Valhalla, which was like 2020, I think. That was like their last massive game, like in terms of like open world single player sort of game. They've done like, Skull and Bones, which was like that was in development forever, that pirate ship game. They've done like the Prince of Persia. They did that Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was basically like an standalone expansion for Valhalla, which is like a smaller contained thingo. So, they've got quite a few things like coming. There's like, apparently there's the Assassin's Creed Feudal Japan from the Odyssey team. So that's going to be another massive
sick
RPG style Assassin's Creed. They've got the Star Wars Outlaws, which is coming out in August now, the release date, which is going to be, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I'm going to play it guaranteed. And then obviously now they've got Far Cry 7. So that seems like their big games are starting to emerge.
Yeah, I'm excited. Talk to me about these graphics cards. Or the graphics card.
Oh, yeah. For a second there, I thought we actually discussed it, but no, we haven't. So this is a cool one. So Galax, who's a NVIDIA partner, mainly for the Asia region. So they've got a new GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 16 gig GPU Max, it's called. And I don't know why it's called Max. Maybe it's like a translation thing, because this thing is tiny. It's a single slot GPU. Now, when you think of it like a single slot GPU, that's basically something that doesn't really exist in 2024. If you look at the article, some of the images, there's an image of it like connected to a PCIe slot on the PC,
just hanging there. There's no screw in it, or at least I can't
just like
see
a tiny little card, just like that. And so it's impressive. So this is, obviously the 4060 Ti is a decent 1080p gaming card. It's powerful for 1080p gaming, and this 16 gig model can do 1440p gaming. So obviously there's two models of the 4060 Ti. There's the 8 gig, which is the more common one, and there's the 16 gig, which is more expensive. Now, apparently, there's a Chinese outlet called EXP Review that reviewed it, and basically the performance is on par or just like slightly slower than an overclocked 4060 Ti, and that would be like a 2.5 slot triple fan version, right? Like that's like 4 times the size of this. So the performance is roughly the same, but it is runs a bit warmer. It's still actually only, the GPU temp still sits at around 70 degrees. So it's like it doesn't overheat, doesn't run like super hot. But because it's got a blower fan, that's one of the reasons why they've got it down to like a single slot. It's a single blower fan that the way that those old school fans work is they just like spin and sucking air in and then just spits it out the rear, the exhaust.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, it's basically creating like a vortex, and it just creates sound. Like it's a design that works for cooling GPUs. You see it now in the workstation space, but it's just noisy, right? So this is obviously a noisy card. It is impressive.
The last NVIDIA GPUs to do that was the 900 series. Because then was it
before that? Would have been before that.
Because I remember the silver 900 GTX 980. Didn't it have one blower fan on one side, and then it was like
that might have been the 780 or the 880 or something like that.
980 GTX. Because
Yeah.
I know when they went to the 10,000 series, they adopt the 2 fans?
Oh yeah, no, it did. So like the 10 series like had like a, let me have a look.
What did the 10 series have? I'm pretty sure they adopted 2 fans because that's when they went. No. 10 series had the one blower fan as well.
Had the blower fan, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So
it
the
was
2000
20
series is when we
Okay.
when we changed.
So it was recently, yeah, you're right. So it's actually later, yeah. So it's the 10 series had the blower. I forgot. Like, yeah, it's like the single fan. That's right, yeah. And they obviously just generate a lot more noise in a closed
Yeah, they were
case.
loud.
Yeah. But that's right. Like you remembered like back then, like GPUs were loud, right? Like when you're gaming, it's like, oh yeah, you can tell when you're gaming because the fans just go wild. Now when you're gaming on the 4090, you don't even hear it.
Quiet as a bird. Quiet. Beautiful.
Yeah. So the only other thing with this GPU is that, yes, it is cool. So like you could put this in like a tiny case. The single slot thickness just makes it look slick and it's like you don't really see it. But the thing is, I think the reason why it exists and why they've chosen the 16 gig models because of AI. And with AI, you can slot these into
Oh yeah, you
tiny
can have
little,
heaps of. You can have a board that has like heaps of just PCIe slots and just put these next to each other.
Yeah, rack mount them and AI, because the thing is like
right, that makes sense.
AI workloads are not only dependent on having like things like CUDA hardware and tensor cores and things like that. They're also very VRAM specific. So you look at different versions of Chat GPT or Stable Diffusion, right? And there's certain workloads or for those like popular ones that like, you need 8 gig to run this one, but you need 16 gig to run the more advanced ones.
Yeah.
So basically, I think one of the reasons why they didn't choose the more prevalent, like the more common 8 gig 4060 Ti is because of AI. So now this can actually be sold as like a workstation solution for AI, where you get 16 gigs of VRAM in a tiny single slot GPU.
That makes sense. Do we have I want to know how much it weighs. It looks light, really light.
Yeah, actually it is. I don't think I put it in, for some reason didn't put it in the article. Let me bring up the review because the review actually has
only 20 millimeters thick, dude.
Yeah, 20 mil. Yeah, that's a single slot. It's tiny, dude. That's why like you look at the picture and you're like, well, like it's 726.8 grams, so it's pretty lightweight.
Okay.
It's actually probably a bit heavier than expected, but it's probably because it's like a full metal casing.
No, that's sick.
Yeah, for support. But it's a really cool design though.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I like that. Good on you, Galax. Mate, I love me a thin card like that.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world where the 4090 is taking up to use a triple slot card. It's good to see cards getting thin again.
Yeah.
Is that about all you had on that story? Did you want to jump over to something else?
Yeah. I'll just close off with a quick other part of the story, which is NVIDIA is potentially working with partners. This has been rumored that they're going to create small form factor PCs. So if you're looking at like mini PCs that are like all Ryzen powered now or Intel Core Ultra powered, you got like the Asus NUC PCs that actually have mobile GPUs, like RTX 4070 mobile GPUs. So apparently NVIDIA is looking to get in on that space. And, like a GPU like this, if you can see they can get a 4060 Ti down to like a tiny size, they could be potentially, well, it seems like they could be using like stuff like the Ada Lovelace, like the mainstream GPUs to create, to work with partners to create like powerful like mini PCs, which would be a market that they haven't necessarily like targeted themselves primarily, like like the NUCs with GeForce GPUs, they're just using laptop NVIDIA GPUs, right? You got like mini PCs that you can get with GeForce GPUs, but they're just using laptop GPUs, which is basically just buying the laptop chip and putting them in a mini PC. So this would be NVIDIA creating like specs for like a mini PC where they could increase the wattage potentially as well, like have like more power to go through them because a mini PC is plugged into a power. You're not beholden to battery life or having to worry about that sort of stuff. So you could unlock more power and things like that, which would be interesting. And this GPU, this single slot 4060 Ti, shows that they've got the hardware to do it, right? So like if you had a tiny mini PC that had basically the equivalent of the 4060 Ti performance, like you'd be able to game on that no problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Like any game.
No, that's interesting. Maybe we'll see some at Computex if there is.
Oh, that would be cool if they announced something like that. That would be cool
because last year, Zotac demoed me a bunch of their mini PCs, and they were getting really small.
And really small. GeForce hardware in them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Hopefully, we do see some demos at Computex. I want to talk to you about.
Should we jump into like the big one, Australia versus Elon?
Okay, yeah, let's go down. I want to get your thoughts on this. So what has happened is quite interesting to me, at least. Elon Musk versus the Australian government. So you've probably heard, but maybe some of the US listeners didn't hear about it. There was an attack on who was it? It was some kind of bishop, wasn't it? Okay, yes. So I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was around the time that man went through the Queensland shopping centre and was stabbing people. That was probably, I would say, biggest.
That was Sydney, wasn't it?
Hey?
Was it Sydney?
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, Sydney. Yes, sorry. Yes, it was Sydney. But in Queensland, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
A bishop was attacked. Oh no, that was also in Sydney. Oh my God, Sydney is the stabbings is mad over there. So a bishop was attacked by some Australian man. I think he cut up the bishop's face while he was giving a presentation, and obviously a lot of people were recording it at the time. Clips of the thing spread everywhere on social media. So Australia's e-safety commissioner asked all the social media platforms to remove access from Australians to these videos because they were deemed this video and the event was deemed a terrorist attack, and it's against the e-safety commissioner or the e-safety commission's laws of displaying like violent and terrorist attack content or content that involves here, I want to get the right word, verbiage for this. Australia's government defined the incident as a terrorist attack due to it involving religious or ideological violence. So any content that involves those two things, is now a terrorist attack, and it's illegal for social media platforms to show Australians that type of content. So Elon Musk X responded, blocking the content along with every other social media platform to Australian users. However, the e-safety commissioner argued this decision doesn't represent the removal of posts which violates Australian law. So the Australian law is the posts need to be removed. Then the e-safety commissioner demanded that X remove global access to the content to abide by its laws. So now the e-safety commissioner is going, even though Australians can't access the content, which is labeled illegal, X now needs to remove access from it globally because it believes that many Australians are simply hitting like a VPN at the top of my Opera browser. Boom. I've circumvented X's geo-lock on the content because my IP address is from Netherlands.
Every like when they were blocking sites for piracy, it was all just like based, so you just VPN to get past it. It's
one click. However, I don't know how many Australians are actually using a VPN to watch a knife attack on a bishop in Sydney. However, Elon Musk has fired back on this. He's standing on business, whether you like it or not. He is saying the e-safety commissioner, in quotes, an unelected official in Australia, have authority over all countries on Earth. He's saying that the e-safety commissioner doesn't have a right to tell X what content it can show other countries, only Australia. Now, where do you land on this?
Well, that's a slippery slope for censorship, right? Because like, take Australia out of the equation, then if it's like, he's right, like if any country can say, like, if the US or Iran, Russia, Israel, China, you look at these, like, you look at the superpowers, right? That are, not going into any sort of geopolitical whatever, let's just say like these superpowers are dictating and doing things in different parts of the world and making deals and doing nefarious things, doing good things, doing whatever they're doing, right? Like politically, militarily, wars, violence, etc., etc. Now, if that single superpower gets to decide what can or can't be posted or viewed or talked about globally, then that seems like that doesn't seem like where like the power should lie. So yeah, he's right in that respect.
Yeah, I think it is. It's kind of gross how the e-safety commissioner has gone. Like some of these quotes from our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, saying that Musk is a bloke who's chosen ego and showing violence over common sense. And he told Sky News, Australians will shake their head when they think that this billionaire is prepared to go to court fighting for the right to sow division and to show violent videos. He is in social media, but he has a social responsibility in order to have that social license. I'm not even sure what that last sentence means.
This is what I think it means.
But wait. But this is, he's trying to find, he's saying that Australia is, standing on the moral high ground here, and that Musk is below him, or X is below him, because they choose to show this video to other countries. It's already blocked in Australia. You can't find it in Australia. So now Australia is, standing up saying, well, this video is so bad that it can't be shown to any other country. Non-Australians can't see this video as well. And that, if you disagree, you are sowing division and to show violent videos.
Is social media a platform for sowing division?
I think it's profited from doing that.
Yes, from profiting. Like, is a system built to sow division and profit from that? You could argue, you could be cynical and say, yes, that's its primary goal, right? But obviously there's more to it than that. But I think the point, or at least what should have been explicitly stated, is that, or what the real debate should be is, should a platform like Twitter or Facebook or whatever other social media, TikTok, etc., should they have their own policies against like showing actual crimes being committed, violent acts, terrorism, to have that footage readily accessible by all audiences around the globe? Like, should they implement their own policy around that? And like, to be honest, like if I was in charge of a social media platform, I would say that, yeah, okay, like there's things that you can't post on here.
Yeah.
That like it violates the terms of service. You can't show.
But what are those terms of service based on? What Musk has chosen to do is almost like localize the X experience by, the laws in the US, this specific state that this type of content can't go on X. So then all the users within that area can't access that type of content. That's essentially what he's done with Australia.
Yes,
it's like Australians
fine,
can't.
Yeah. Like
so the terms of service is dynamic between wherever the user is. Instead of there being one like bill of rights for X, it changes depending on the laws of where the user is accessing it from.
It should be both, right? It should be like A, you can't do this on X, and B, if we like it to be available in your country or in your location, like it adheres to the local laws. So if there's anything that violates that, you'll get a message that says, sorry, this you can't view this because of your government's laws on blah blah blah, right? So then you do both. And I think that's like the common sense or the level-headed debate should be about, like, okay, like what your problem is, Australia, is that you want this to be removed globally, but in order to do that isn't us adhering to your laws. It's for us to change our own terms to say, okay, that is actually in violation, so we will remove that from based on our own code of ethics, terms on what you can and can't post or view, etc., for the platform that you're trying to build as well. But like where it becomes like heated like this is because you've got like Australia versus Musk. You've got like a prime minister who's saying, hey, you're just a egomaniac billionaire. And then you've got Elon Musk being a troll or, not necessarily in this specific case, but in general, like the stuff he posts, whether it's political or things like that, it's inflammatory. Half of it's tells you like a fraction of, mix and matches facts. Like, like he's not exactly known for being clinical or just like presenting just, a level-headed argument or things like that. Like he goes on.
It's a lot of shit posting.
etc. So like that's where you get this sort of dynamic where the Australian government says he's just a rich billionaire running this social media platform, like where anything goes, and it's fine to just log into Twitter or X and just see like violent images nonstop. That's not like that's not what it is, right? So it's blown out of proportion. But at the end of the day, like the debate is whether or not I think like you can actually post this stuff onto Facebook or Meta or Twitter. Like, should you be allowed to? And if you're allowed to, then okay, like then it's just based on the country and the laws and where the platform is viewable, how it's censored, as opposed to the platform censoring, which is what you were saying before, is like it shouldn't be like Australia dictating how it runs
globally. Yeah. Well, might be a bit of a left field kind of argument here, but the reason that the terrorist content was taken down is because the regulator believes that it would be harmful to the viewers, right? So if you can, I don't know how you would quantify that amount of harm, but couldn't you make a case that pornographic video content is doing more harm than that terrorist video?
Well,
and X is riddled with pornographic video content. So where do we draw the line between what content is harmful and what content is not?
Well, that's right. Like then like if you go like, okay, if there's a victim, but then like there could be a victim in both scenarios. But I think you just boil it down to like just common sense of like, like if it is like a terrorist thing, like, if there's like shocking like footage of like
gore and stuff like
things
that.
Like that. Like, it can cause real damage to people that are associated. Like, let's say
100%.
Like somebody was violently killed, right?
Of course, yes. If you bring it home, but I'm talking about like the widespread impact of porn on just that. Let's just say the male population.
Yeah.
Like if you bring it home and it's a terrorist attack video, and obviously I do side with the fact that we shouldn't have access to, the freaking Christchurch shooter that went through.
I don't think that.
Yeah,
sort of
I don't think that should be readily available to get. However, I'm certain that I would be able to find it. It would take me 10 minutes to find. If you actually just looked, you would be able to find it. But it's just the immediate access to it. However, there is immediate access on X to porn. And there's a lot of stuff that is going around where the porn isn't particularly healthy for young men, and just from the age of like 13 having instant access to it, but with like just a few button presses,
that's damaging. I agree with you on that one front, but like I think that when it comes to like terrorism, war, and stuff like that. I think you keep that separate, like because
we shouldn't have seen all that Russia videos then.
yeah. I agree. Yeah, I don't think we should be seeing like massacres. We shouldn't be seeing like things like. But then also as well, like there's war correspondence that is important, right? Like when you see like reports, like people like from the battlefield, from journalists, photojournalists or video journalists, and you see that the aftermath, like but like sometimes like on social media you might just see it there, like like there's no warning, like should there be like a blur and it's like the following contains
age
blah, blah,
gate.
blah, like or age, like like opt in or things like that, like
I don't know.
like
It
it's
is
like
really
a wild west.
dicey.
Like there has to be some sort of balance between
for
but
sure.
I think this, like to me, this is like a clear cut thing where like I think you're right and Elon Musk is fundamentally right, is that like we can't change how we operate just based on one country's laws.
Yeah,
that's
I
fair
think
enough.
that's wrong.
But then that's fair enough. But like for this specific case, then you go, well, should people be able to view this? Should people be able to view that? Then that's a healthy debate. But like I think this particular spat between the Australian government and Elon Musk is has been sensationalized. But like, it also at the end of the day, like as you might agree with like Australian government and say like, oh yeah, nobody should be looking at that, which is a fair enough stance to take. But at the end of the day, like you can't expect Microsoft to change, like or Google to change their search results based on what the US government says shouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be forced into doing so unless everybody agrees democratically, I think. Actually what is interesting, and I didn't include this in my story, but is something that I did read. So after the Christchurch shooting, which was an absolute tragedy, Twitter, at the time, Twitter and a bunch of other social media platforms signed an online act which vowed that they would remove any form of terrorist content. And Twitter is still has to adhere to that act, or, what they said that they would do. And by Musk keeping this available,
it's like he's
breaking
picking and choosing. Like he could have just said, yeah, we're going to remove it globally.
Yeah,
and that doesn't mean that it's not like the extreme of like now Twitter is only abiding or X is only going to be abiding by the rules of this one country. Like it's like then you're sensationalizing it as well. Like he could have just come around and say, yeah, all right, we'll remove it globally. And at the end of the day, like, is that going to upset you that they remove that?
No, I saw some comments where it's like
what? Pick your battles.
It's interesting that Musk has chosen a terrorist attack video as the thing, as the what's the right word for it? As the martyr to free speech. It's like, we need to keep this up because if we take this down, it's going to be the free speech is going. We're losing free speech. It's like, that's a terrorist attack video.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that you want to be like, show everyone. That's the marketing for free speach. So, I think there's better options out there,
Yeah, exactly right. Like it could have been just like a nothing if you just removed it. Like you said with like the Christchurch stuff, it's like it makes sense. Yeah, okay, we'll remove it. Like we'll make sure like it's not on there.
Yeah.
It's like case closed. Because who's you're not going to be like full page. You're going to get protests in the street. We want to see the terrorist video. Like, why? Like you're going to get thousands of people protesting to see atrocities and violence of like a specific an event where the facts are known, and the reasons, like if you want to know what happened, you can find out exactly what happened, and what the repercussions were. Like you don't, like you're not going to be protesting based on what, like what is being suppressed. Like the information is out there. You just want like the visual.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's stupid.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date on any developments with this story. It's currently ongoing, but I'm not sure it's going to get anywhere. I think, Musk is going to tell the E-Safety Commission to shove it. And I don't think they're going to win in court either, whatever court that they fight in. But let's jump over to the IRS and how many Americans are soon going to be caught by AI if they're evading taxes. I don't know how you feel about this, but this was, I don't know, since I started seeing the potential of AI and just the sheer capabilities of this kind of software, and also the performance in terms of how fast it can sort through a database and locate specific things, pull up information about people, about events, about products, like all the stuff that I use it for. But now the IRS CEO has said on April 17th that it is looking to implement AI-powered systems in 2 ways. One, to assist the American taxpayer through a virtual like chat experience. I'm guessing like it would be like a mini chat bot or something like that, where you can ask it about your personal tax process and all of the laws that you need to abide by, etc., etc. Which I think is great. And the other implementation is to help IRS agents to discover undetected tax cheats. So the CEO of the IRS described this implementation of AI as giving the IRS, quote, night vision goggles that would enable the agency to, quote, unlock
See everything
and see and spot the issues, end quote, in case of the, quote, most complicated, largest taxpayers across the US. So what he said just right there is he's coming after, with AI, the biggest tax cheats in the US. However, he didn't mention at all if this is going to be used on the little guy, like the old mum and pop
this is where it becomes
corner store.
Yeah, it will, right? Like, you know,
of
exactly
course it
where.
will.
Because,
of course it will.
like, I mean, all right, we don't want this to become political, but let's just assume, which is a safe assumption to make, that the tax code system in America favors the rich, right? You know, it's fact, right? That companies like Amazon don't pay or Apple, they pay very little in taxes in the US.
Yeah, it's amazing how they can get through paying zero tax.
Yeah, so how do they make money is that you go after like the middle class or the upper middle, where you know where the biggest,
me and you do.
Where the biggest
me and
tax,
you in Australia.
That's right, where the biggest taxpayers sit. And so if you develop this AI system, like what point, like, you know, at what point can you turn it on to like companies like Amazon and Apple and Google, and not even at that level, but like, you know, even like multi-million-dollar companies that names that you'd never heard of or whatever. Like, it's not going to happen because they have accountants and lawyers and, you know, help write the tax code, and they're in control of they you know, like, what I mean, like it's not going to like the AI is not going to be like targeting the 1%, let's say, you know.
I think it will, but it will also just be used for like,
there'll be like
just your everyday blue collar worker, middle class guy that, you know, he might have sold some stuff on eBay, and for whatever reason it's just skimmed through his bank account and saw that he had a lot more deposits in it than what he said on his papers. But he was trying to do his best and be as honest as possible, but some things slipped through.
Yeah, and what do you do?
And now he's flagged in the system, and now he's flagged for an order, and then an IRS agent will comb through everything that he's ever done ever, or at least up until the point where they can't anymore, and then issue him with the proportionate amount of fine of what you've missed. It's going to be gross. I think the amount of people that will be discovered cheating the system, I think it's going to be more than what people think.
But also as well,
and I'm sure it's also going to come to Australia at some time.
But also as well, being AI, right? It's going to be flawed, and it's probably going to get, you know, like have all sorts of like issues where the wrong people are being flagged. Like there's, it's like it's being set up to have some sort of like disaster scenario where, like, you know, I was targeted by this, and, you know, I was innocent.
Yeah.
And then it caused like so much distress. which
And then you got to take it to court.
Yeah.
You got to go through all the red tape to get it, like, your name expunged from all of the accusations. It's gonna be a nightmare, but we're here for it. It's obviously going to be it's going to be a very very cool implementation that I'm sure it's going to be very popular. Let's move on. We're running out of time.
Science. I really want to hear about this solar sail.
Okay, I don't know if you're a big fan of Treasure Planet,
yeah,
but I believe it is. Oh, we did.
Before, but yeah, like
we did.
I don't know. Like, it's vaguely familiar.
I think I've covered a previous solar sail, but this one is smaller than I think the one that I've previously reported on. But I keep comparing it to the 2002 animated Disney movie Treasure Planet, which is one of my favorites.
Because this is basically, it's like ship sails in space.
That is exactly right. So NASA has made a solar sail. I'll just run through this very quickly. It's not very an in-depth story. It's created its own solar sail. It'll be transported into space Tuesday, April 23. So it is, as we speak. Yes, as of recording, it is going through space right now.
This is cool because it's actually happening.
Yeah, right now, which is sick. Rocket Lab Electron rocket. I'm pretty sure it's blasting off from New Zealand somewhere, because I think that's where Rocket Lab is. The rocket will be carrying a CubeSat, which will be approximately the size of a microwave, if I remember correctly. And once it gets to space, it will be deployed 600 miles above Earth, which is twice the altitude of the International Space Station. It needs to be up that high to essentially deal with like the gravity and make the maneuvers that it needs to do. It will undergo a 2-month-long system check, which kind of sucks. And that would then be followed by the deployment of its solar sail.
I could check the system in like a week.
Yeah, give us a couple 4090s. We'll run through it. When fully unfurled, the solar sail will be as big as half a tennis court. And what it will do then is do up, down, left, right maneuvers. Now, how does it work? So it works exactly the same as a ship sail, except the photons from the sun are the wind. And because it's such a massive reflective piece of material and surface area, when the photons hit the material, it creates a tiny amount of momentum that then shifts from the photon into the material, and that creates push. And from there, they can then angle the sails to different orientations and control which way as CubeSat is moving. Cool. So it'll take approximately 25 minutes for the solar sail to fully deploy. All of that is going to be captured on spacecraft mounted cameras that will be monitoring the shape and the symmetry. And there's a chance that it's going to be visible from Earth, which I think is really cool, because when at the correct orientation, it will be so reflective that it will be as bright as the brightest star in the night sky. So maybe, I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it with the naked eye, but definitely with some amateur astronomy equipment, you'd be able to catch a glimpse of this thing. And yeah, this is the first step for what they believe is very cheap, very low cost exploratory missions to regions in the solar system, possibly beyond. If the material is really good, and it will only get better with future generations of it, humans will then start blasting these solar sails with a very high what would be the right word? Just a high-powered beam, a laser or something like that, hit the back of the sail and just essentially launch it into whatever direction that they want.
In space, there's no like friction or deceleration like you find here. Like, it's such a cool thing that this is how it works. Like, it works the way like ships on the sea work in at its most basic physics level of being able to propel through the sail and catch the wind direction and speed. Like, it's something that I would love to see more in like sci-fi, whether it's like a sci-fi series like Foundation, or like a Star Wars type movie, where you've got like spaceships, but they're all like they all have their own sail system, and it all looks cool and futuristic, but also has that element of like ships in space, actual like spaceships, and like you
Yeah.
might like travel with like rockets or whatever to go between star systems, but then like when you get around a planet or whatever, like you just the sails come up and then they transform, or you could even have like naval style like sail battles with like battleships in space using like sails and stuff. How cool would that be?
Yeah, man. It's all Treasure
Yeah,
Planet.
Treasure
I
Planet,
love
exactly,
it.
right? Like, but like a live action version of that. So cool.
It's what I'm most excited for is how cheap it is compared to chemical rockets.
Yeah.
And also just the fundamental physics of it all. It's so simple. The sun is an endless stream for all intents and purposes. Wind.
Yep.
Photons are for millions and possibly billions of years. The sun is just going to be giving off photons, and if we can utilize that, it is renewable free energy. And then also blasting these sails with a high powered laser which contains all of the photons that you need. It would just be awesome to see a sail just get up to speeds of like it could be hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. There is no resistance in space. We could just keep blasting it, and it would just be going so fast.
What if there was like a couple of like space stations like orbiting like Mars, right? And then like travel between these space stations. You hop on like a ship and you got like a captain and sailor, and like they put up the sails, and then you just transport between like space stations on like these basically like ships with sails.
That's
because
space trams.
Because you that's right, because you're saving. You don't require that much propulsion or chemical rockets and stuff like that.
Yep.
There'll
be an orbiting spaceport that essentially I imagine would have a massive solar panel or some kind of device, high tech device that would be gathering all of the photons from the sun, as well as having an emergency system where Earth can just like beam it.
Oh yeah.
With a bunch of energy, and then from that they'll go into mini kind of lasers for each of the kind of like train like spots on a train station where you go you're A, B, C and stuff.
Yep.
And a ship is at A, a ship is at B, a ship is at C, and they're all going off to like Mars, the moon, and they just have direct
cool.
constant
it's like a rail system,
destination lines,
like a rail system, but like in a fully 3D
for trains,
3D dynamic space with like that takes all these complex like orbital calculations and stuff into. That'll be mad.
Yeah, and then you jump on a ship, and it's like, okay, this one's blasting off at 3 p.m. is the closest time for the ship to get from the spaceport to the moon because of the orbits and all of like that. So everyone gets on, then the little mini laser is fed in the energy from the big, I'm guessing it would be a massive battery of some kind, and then it just goes on the back of the solar sail, and then you're off. It would be awesome. It would be so cool, and it's low power as well. Well, theoretically cheap. Theoretically cheap and low power, but yes, all the same, this is very cool technology that makes me excited. Low cost space travel is what's going to make space travel
possible,
accessible to everybody, and stuff like this is I think is epic. It's just so cool that we're doing this, and it's happening right now as we're talking.
That is so cool.
Which is sick. I only have a couple more stories. Did you want to do one before I get into the Intel signing Pentagon contract?
No, because we're obviously getting along. But no, we'll finish off with your stories for sure.
Okay, cool. Well, this one won't take very long, and maybe you could speak on it a little bit as well. But Intel and the Pentagon have partnered up under the CHIPS Act to begin manufacturing advanced microchips. This is all from Intel's recent press release. So the program is specifically under the National Security Accelerator program and is funded by the CHIPS Act. Intel and Pentagon have agreed to essentially create test samples of the extremely advanced microchips, and for the first time, it will be this deal has given the US government access to leading chip manufacturing capabilities. I don't necessarily believe that. I think this is the first public instance where, you know, they've said publicly, Intel has come out and said, yeah, the US government is
but
it has access. I'm like, I'm sure that they've had that since you've been around.
Yeah.
Like, if they wanted to get into it, they could get into it.
I think
don't
so.
think
It's weird because, I mean, a lot of these technologies, like, I mean, you look at like the Pentagon and stuff like that, like, you know, Microsoft has deals with them. You know, when they made that HoloLens AR stuff back in the day, who was their number one customer? The Pentagon, right?
Yeah.
You know, when AR and things like that, they're on the forefront of technology. It's not like they're,
definitely.
you think of like government bureaucracy and you're thinking like they're all running Windows 95 PCs and, you know, printing on inkjet printers, they're beige colored printers. They're like printing out the reports, fax machines going off.
with all dial up.
But like, you know, like military technology is at the cutting edge, like the stuff with drones and stuff. Like, I mean, like what hardware is that stuff running on now? Like this is basically just saying that the Pentagon is signed as a customer to get Intel's next gen node. Now, I think a big part of this story as well is the fact that it's American made, quote unquote, right? Because America is so invested in what happens in Taiwan, primarily because of it being the semiconductor capital of the world, and with the tensions in China and stuff like that, they're probably looking. This sort of deal allows them to have direct control over the security of it.
Yep, that's
so, like,
exactly right. Yeah, no backdoors on the chips or anything like that.
And Intel is investing so much into, like, they're losing billions, right? Like, but they're investing so much into becoming a TSMC. Like, they want to be TSMC in tomorrow if they could, right? And,
yeah, for sure.
And their cutting edge nodes are coming soon. You know, there's no guarantee that these are going to be as good as what TMC is cooking up and has been cooking up, right? But, you know, they're going down to like 4 nanometer, 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer process. And if this is going to be using, you know, high-end 2 nanometer process and whatever chips, like Intel will make them, Intel architecture, I assume, but customized for the Pentagon. So it's also almost like a keeping it in-house in a way, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head perfectly there. And yeah, like you said, I just think this is the first like public facing partnership that we've seen where, you know, Intel's coming out and saying, look, the Pentagon's is a partner of ours. It's like, well, what you don't think the Pentagon had access to your chips before this, it's the Pentagon. They've got their fingers in everything.
Exactly.
But it is, I do like that they're bringing it home. I think the reliance on TSMC is, I mean, they just make some of the best. They do make the best chips in the world. But I would like to see more of these.
The alternative is
microchip companies coming up. Well, not coming up. Intel is one of the biggest players, if not, one of the biggest players at the table. But just bringing manufacturing back to the US and not relying on so many import and export kind of deals.
Factors like security as well, like national security, like it's within your borders, right? So it's like you're the Pentagon, and you're getting this chip developed in this country here, right on the doorstep of China, or you're getting it here in outskirts of some, you know, state or whatever the case is, wherever the facilities are. I forget, but I mean, you're like outside of TMC, the only other big player is Samsung and their process nodes, and they're accelerating, you know, and they do some of the best memory and things like that. Like Intel and the Pentagon, it's almost like a given. Like it makes sense, but at the same time as well, like everybody's getting into chip production, right? Like Microsoft and Google and Intel is trying to get everybody. Like Intel wants to make a deal with, or if they haven't already, with NVIDIA. I can't remember if they have or not, to use their more advanced process nodes that are coming up as an option. NVIDIA is a US company, so they'd be invested in doing that. Or like you look at Apple, right? and they gobble up
TSMC's
first batch of their most advanced nodes for their chips,
Right.
right? And I don't think Apple will come out tomorrow and say, "Hey, we're going to look at Intel because they've got this relationship with TSMC." It's like whatever you're developing, we want in on the ground floor.
Yep.
First customer,
Mhm.
however many wafers we want. So like they're
Yep.
not going to turn around and say like, "Oh, we're making a deal with Intel because they can do something similar for a cheaper price and it's more local and there's less."
Yeah, they don't necessarily care about.
But maybe someday
the
down the road
location.
they would, right?
Maybe.
Like if
They would need. Yeah, Intel would need a product that is better and cheaper than TSMC's.
yeah.
To attract Apple on that. Last story, we'll talk about Microsoft being called a national security threat by ex-White House Cyber Policy Director
This is like
AJ
a political
Grotto.
episode.
Yes, I think we're going off the chain here. But it does raise important questions about the dominance of Microsoft. So Grotto did an interview with the Register and said that Microsoft accounts for 85% of the federal government's productivity software services. And because of its dominance in that market, has a lot of leverage over the US government. And I don't know if you have been paying attention to it, but Microsoft has been hacked a few times. One of the most recent examples was corporate email accounts being hacked by a Russian-linked group. I think I might have talked about it on the show. I'm not entirely sure. Microsoft's response was, it was hardly a response. We didn't even really see a like, oh, sorry, this is really bad. They just kind of just go about their day. And then you can go back to the Solar Winds episode. I can't account for that. I can't recount that story. It was, I think it was a few years ago. But again, another hacking. And Microsoft had to be kicked in. This AJ Grotto said that Microsoft had to be dragged kicking and screaming to provide logging capabilities to the US government, which illustrates its power and leverage, purely because all of the productivity apps that the US government, US federal government uses are all Microsoft stuff.
Yeah, but like this comes down to the whole argument of because you're the customer, you get to dictate what you have access to just because you're the US government. It's like you're choosing to use Microsoft's. You could be using Google's suite of software if you don't like it. Like, like I guarantee, like the thing is that Microsoft has a lock on businesses, right? So government agencies are going to be using Microsoft. And they have since like the 90s and the 80s. And it's just the case that like, companies and government, even just like, municipal things, like they run off Microsoft systems, and then you go all the way up to probably national security agencies and things like that, CIA, they're all going to be running Microsoft, right? So then now is Microsoft beholden to design access and software and backdoor entries and things like that specifically for the government?
No.
Like isn't that
I don't think so. But I think there should be some kind of... I don't like the relationship between Microsoft and the US government. I feel like Microsoft is...
They're bending over backwards for them anyway, I think. I don't think they're necessarily being dragged kicking and screaming. It's like, sure. But like it's even like with like Meta and Facebook, it's like they didn't want to give the government like direct access to everything, right? Because they demanded it, or like even like look at X or whatever, like the government wants like, we want X. We want to be able to just not even ask you. We just want to look up this user and get we just want to say this thing here. We want the entire geopolitical history. We want everything on this user or whatever the case is. Now, the companies like initially didn't want to do that, but like there's so much pressure that like they're all like just caving and eventually anyway. So like this isn't a case of like, oh, like, Microsoft doesn't want to play ball. It's like, well, it's like their software. They're a software company. They're a tech company. They're not designing this stuff to be surveillance tools. Like the algorithms, if they're designing anything, they're just designing them to make money and to become, You know what I mean? Like they're not designing it for governments and national security and hacking and stuff like that. That's all just secondary.
But what about when it is a national security incident, like a hacking or something like that? Like say the Russian link group that resulted in corporate email accounts being compromised.
They're not using
or like
the Windows firewall, right? They're not using a Windows firewall.
Yeah, but this is an attack by a foreign agency. Shouldn't Microsoft be more than willing to give up the logging capabilities and all information regarding this attack to the US? Why? Because it's an attack on the US federal corporate email system.
If it's a specific case, yes. But like, the thing with like the US government, like again, political episode, is that they will turn anything into a blank check, right? Like, like there in the US, there used to be a system that if you wanted, if the government wanted to listen to your phone calls, they had to go to a court and they had to get approval from a judge, and then they would get access to your. It would be all in the public record. Then they could tap your phone and then listen to your phone calls, but then within strict guidelines and rules. Okay, that's just phone tapping. Now, what they're arguing for here is be able to. They want to just tap your phone with or without your permission, with or without oversight, with or without government, like municipal or judge approval or court approval. They want.
Right, you're talking about the story that I have.
No, just in general. Like that's where it leads. Like if like.
Oh yeah, it will lead to something like that.
Like access to like a specific details for a case. Yes, put that request in.
Like the SolarWinds thing,
and get the response. But like they want blank check. They want Windows to be like something that they control.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I just think that Microsoft needs to be a bit more lenient on giving them information in things where they have become compromised. And Microsoft has come out and said, look, yeah, we got hacked. It appears to be Russian linked, and it's a Russian state-sponsored hacking group that is carrying out these attacks against US federal agency officials and corporate email accounts. They look to be gathering data. Microsoft should be there and be like, here, police, here's all the information.
Yeah.
I think that's for sure. But I also don't think that they should have like an inline feed into every single, Windows device that is running it.
And they want to be able to see everything that Microsoft sees at any point in time.
Yeah, to have that in real time is mad, but I think for an event where crimes have been committed and data has been stolen, I think that Microsoft should be more than willing to give that over
on a case by case basis, which is why I brought up like the phone tapping thing. It's like if there's a case, and it's in front of a judge, and then like a separate entity, like a civil judge, not the Pentagon saying Microsoft, we want this, even if it's a hacking, and then the judge says, okay, Microsoft provide this information, and this is the source, Russian hack, blah blah blah. Here's all the information that you need to give. Like there needs to be a third party, a mediator. Like you can't just have,
I agree.
One entity like being like whether even if it's just Microsoft or it's just the US government being in control over being able to log into any account, to have access to any information, private information or whatever the case is at any time. Like that it needs to have like that's why like as bloated as governments get, you need to have like a separate entity, like a civil system that's in control that reviews each case and it's dealt on a case by case basis. And there needs to be a
public paper trail as well.
Yeah, that's right. And sure, it's going to take things will take longer. And when you're talking,
bit of red tape.
When you're getting into the more serious stuff like terrorist attacks and hacking and things like that, you need to act quick, and I get that. But it's a slippery slope to have like the US government have a backdoor into every Microsoft PC on the planet.
Yeah. Like Spectre and Intel.
Yeah.
We should wrap this episode up. Thank you very much for listening, guys. It was quite a different episode. We spent a lot of time in politics and how tech can influence politics. Unexpected.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
It's like a tale of two halves. The first half was all fun games and stuff like that, and the second half we got serious.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you can expect out of the TT show. You start off with a really cool next gen kind of game, and then you may end up in the pits of what AI is ruining your life today. um, as always, all of the stories that we talked about in today's show are in the description in the Google Doc. If you're listening on Spotify, go head over to the YouTube, and if you're watching on YouTube, go follow us on Spotify and any other podcast platform that is available. That this is available. I'm pretty sure it's on everything. So, yeah. Do you have anything to sign this off with?
No, thanks for listening. And if you have any opinions on any of the topics, let us know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you agree with us.
I think what you notice that when we discuss anything that's like when we start on like the topic of X and Australian government, or even like this AI stuff, we both have our like general stance, but then we kind of like our opinions evolve as we discuss things. Like by the end we like, oh yeah, this, which I think is a fun way to approach it, because when at the very least we're not highly opinionated or like just like looking at the one side.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important to say with the Australian versus Elon Musk story is to highlight both sides of the argument,
and to show like the merits of both sides.
Yeah, and exactly right. Play devil's advocate to your own argument, still manner, and then the listeners can make up their own mind from where they land on it. Yeah, I'm not here, and I don't think you are here to ram opinion down anyone's throat. Like we're
especially when it comes to politics, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah, definitely not. And that is inherently against what we do as journalists as well. Exactly. Like all of the stories that we try and write in the most objective way possible. So whenever I write an opinion in my story, I always make sure it says like my thoughts or something, and it's bolded. It's not like
when I put an opinion in a story,
it's not a part of the main body,
separate to a review, which is entirely opinion. But like if it's a news story, and if I put an opinion in there, it's mostly non-confrontational, clearly an opinion, but also just something that is just so slight that it doesn't sway one way or another what this is about. Like I might say, oh, this looks cool, and that's like your personal opinion. But outside of that, it's got no. It's not like a political stance or something, or a radical statement.
Not at all. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Thank you.